So it's no secret that one of the biggest roadblocks when it comes to interior design isn't necessarily coming up with the design itself, but more so the price tag associated with the professional work that oftentimes that design will come with. For example, in this room, the tile installation would have been 6 times the cost of the tiles themselves, which was money that I at the time did not have. This brings us to the DIY world, and thankfully we have a wonderful platform such as YouTube, which teaches us how to do the trades that we aren't taught how to do in a traditional classroom. But I'm not gonna lie, watching these professional builders do some of these things will give you a confidence that you probably should be a little bit cautious about. The first 2 tiles I laid in this room, I broke down into tears. So I wanna give you guys 5 mistakes that I made with respect to interior design that I want you guys to avoid in the future. Let's go. Before we get into this video, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and turn on those post notifications so that you guys can stay up to date on my coming videos where I'm going to teach you guys how I overcame some of these hurdles that I had with these mistakes, you should say. Mistake number 1, I did not consider my room location with respect to sound. Sound is an integral part of interior design. Part of interior design comes down to the room's functionality, and if you are creating something like an office space, then you really want to consider sound location. So not only is this room open to the rest of the house because it doesn't have a door, but it is also below the main living area of the house, which means every footstep, every talk, every time somebody drops something on the floor, I could hear it, and you have no idea how many fights that caused behind the scenes with respect to recording. So when you are choosing your room, make sure that the sound that you have is optimal for the task that you're going to be doing there. And if you do actually have the budget to like rip out the ceiling or rip out some walls and you're redoing the whole thing, be sure to opt for some soundproof insulation that can really isolate the room, because you can never really have a room that is too quiet, to say the least. Mistake number 2 ties into sound as well, and that was the fact that I did not consider the materials I was choosing when I built this room. You see, originally this room had a carpet, so when I would talk in here, yes, there was an echo, but I knew that was only when I took things out. But when I installed tile flooring, all of that reverberation became far more apparent, and I can even hear it now as I talk, but I've done some things to make recording a little bit more optimal. So when you are choosing your materials, instead of giving yourself a headache later down the road, make sure that you're choosing materials that are also conducive to the productivity of your room. For example, if you are going to be recording in an area, then having a lot of hard surfaces in the room might not be the best choice because you'll catch reverb. I want to stress that this is really a trade-off. Even if I could go back and choose again, I'm still gonna go with the tile because I like the way that it looks. But if I would have thought about this beforehand, I would have been able to do some extra preparations or add some things into my budget that I may have needed to reduce the reverb instead of having to do it later on like I've done now. Mistake number 3 that I made is that early on in the design, I cut some corners. This again comes down to this floor, but this is a perfect example of when they tell you to do something, do it. One of the things when it comes to tiling a floor is making sure that your floor is level. When I installed the hardwood floors upstairs, I was told to do the same thing, but it really wasn't so much an issue because that was plywood and our upstairs is pretty level. However, downstairs I was working in the foundation. And so when I went to start tiling, I'm just like, I can add some extra mortar here and there. And that did not work out well. Now the floor overall is beautiful, but there are a few imperfections, or what you would call lippage, that I notice that doesn't really bother me because again, it's the work of my own hands. But if it was perfect, I would be that much happier with the end product. Again, these are things that I live with and things that I knew kind of would happen because I was gonna pay that 6 times the cost. And I also didn't have the money in the budget at the time to really buy a floor leveling system or the amount of floor leveling system that I needed, because I did level over in that corner quite a bit. However, make sure that when you're doing something and they tell you that you need to take this extra step that seems time consuming and tedious, that you do it so that your finished product comes out looking perfect. Mistake number 4 was undercalculating the amount of product that I needed. This led to me having to go back and forth to Lowe's or Home Depot over 8 or 9 times throughout the course of just the floor project alone. This still to this day happens to me on almost every DIY project, but a lot less now that I've become more conscious and started using some calculators to calculate how much materials I need and really think the tools that I would need through as well. That also ties into not having the tools that I needed. I wasted a whole bag of mortar in itself because I didn't have the right tool to mix it without my drill's motor wanting to burn out. So taking into consideration these things and making sure that you have all the tools and all the materials before you start a project, because I spent over 3 hours of driving back and forth between stores, starting and stopping projects just because I wasn't prepared the first time. The last and final mistake number 5. That is listening to the Lowe's associates over my better judgment with respect to my abilities. Now, meanwhile, when all of this was going on, I had saw this little edger tool that's right here. You can see here that it has some wheels. So you basically stick it up against the edge. There's a pad here. You dip it in the paint, stick it up against the edge, roll it, and you get the perfect line. Now, I saw this and the lady's like, that's not the best way to do it. So I'm like, oh, you don't have the attention to detail, Sydney, but maybe you can do it. And that did not turn out to be the case. As you can see here, you're about to see 2 different ceilings. One where I stuck with my judgment and finally just used the edger tool that I also bought, and one where I used a paintbrush. Now, I am not a professional painter, but my paint jobs come out much more pristine when I use tools that help me, tools that are designed for people who aren't professionals. You see, that tool probably only upset her because she was a professional painter. I'm not a professional painter. I just want to get it done and I want it to look nice. So keep that in mind. And this also happened with a project that I'm gonna talk to you guys about later, where I had this idea on how to soundproof a door and the lady told me it wasn't gonna work. I didn't listen to her this time and the project came out perfect. So I want you guys to keep these things in mind. You know your abilities the best. You know your creative abilities, your construction abilities, and your attention to detail abilities. Rely on your better judgment and chances are your project will come out good. But use that with an asterisk. Like, if they tell you to do something that's like to prevent a mistake that's major, then don't do it. But if it's simply like a little tool that makes your job easier, go ahead for it. Anyway guys, I hope you guys liked this video. If you did, be sure to give me a big thumbs up, hit that subscribe button, and turn on those post notifications if you have not. Be sure to follow me on my social media. The links are in the description down below, as well as the social media fam. Their links are also in the description down below. If you guys are ever feeling uninspired, uncreative, or just want to give up on life, remember, every day airplanes take off against the wind. Keep climbing, stay inspired, and as always, stay fabulous. My name is Sydney, and I will see you guys next time. Peace out.